Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Ryan Niddel. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting, Life Unscripted. I'm so grateful to have you here today. I'm grateful to have you talk today about failing startups and how to triple your revenue, because guess what? A lot of businesses do not even make it to year 5. And we would like to turn that around in 2023 for businesses listening in today. And I know you're the man to do that. You're a business growth strategist and have helped loads of business increase their revenue and their EBITDA, and you're going to help us do that today. Welcome to Savvy. And before we get started, just share a little bit about your background.
Yes, thanks so much for having me, Christina. So background to me is pretty simple. I'm a basic guy from the Midwest. I'm born and raised in Ohio in different parts. I'm a graduate of Miami of Ohio, a little university in Southern Ohio. And really, Christina, it's been a combination of a lot of determination and a lot of luck, I think, simultaneously, that have led me to this moment in time right now, where I started out post college, jumping into the illustrious world of automotive sales, right? I was a used car salesman when it really comes right down to it. Had an engineering background and jumped into automotive sales, but found very quickly that there are systems and processes inside dealerships that make them more and more successful. So I think finding a mentor, finding that person that can help pour into you early in your career or even later is incredibly valuable. And that's one of the things that helped me grow in that industry rather rapidly to end up moving to Columbus, Ohio, running the largest European collection of automobile companies in the country, a dealership called Midwestern Auto Group. And then, Christina, I realized that I had 2 full-time jobs, right? I was working 80+ hours a week. And while my income was good, my quality of life was maybe 0, right? And didn't have the equity side either, right? I think there's part of that as you're a business owner. There's those times, there's those seasons where you have to work really hard and you're putting in a lot of hours. But there's that I'll call it that golden parachute that can come later. There's that, man, at one point I could sell this thing and I get a multiple of what the company's generated in revenue. And I didn't have that. So I stepped away from that, didn't know what was next, was brought onto the ground floor of a startup web hosting company. Didn't know what web hosting was, didn't know what affiliate marketing was, just a normal guy, but ended up taking over that company after 4 to 6 months, took over as president and CEO, bought out a few of the partners, helped this little company grow from 10,000 clients to 580,000 clients in 2.5 years, raised capital twice, sold it to a subsidiary of GoDaddy. And all of a sudden, this incredible world opened up for me of small business ownership and all the different, I call them games, but all the different games that can be played inside of a small business and positive games, right? Ethical games. Yeah. But the things of, right, you make those small incremental changes. If you can increase your marketing efficiency by 2 or 3 points, and you increase your closing ratio by 2 or 3 points, and you decrease your cost of fulfillment by 2 or 3 points, those are massive changes to a business. And then those massive changes, right, create a massive windfall later. Said old adage, right? Small hinges swing big doors.
Yeah, so true. And it's interesting here. You went into the line of investing in businesses, small businesses in particular. And I think Forbes is that's his main line of investment. I'm sure he does other things like real estate as well. And I think often when people think investing, they think in the stock market or they think real estate, which are definitely valid forms. But often what's missed is the wonderful opportunity in small businesses. And if you can get them growing, they could be wonderful avenues of investing.
Well, I couldn't agree more, Christina. I mean, you really look at the dollars and cents, and I need to preface this with I'm not a qualified investor. I don't know the stock market, all the things you're supposed to say. When you really look at it, just being a simple guy, the S&P 500 has grown right, maybe 8% per year if you look far enough back. I think the real estate market, take COVID out of the equation, I think you look at 2 or 3% growth annually. But then you look at businesses, right? The things that you and I pour our life energy into. As long as the business is larger than 10% net margin, right? If 10 cents of every dollar is falling to the bottom line, and those businesses hit those critical milestones of, right, more than $1 million in EBITDA, some things like that, and you have some systems and processes built, not only are you making 10 cents on the dollar, which is higher yield than, of course, either one of those other 2 potential verticals, then you're going to get a 3, 5, 7, 10x multiple on that $1 million of EBITDA. So now you have an exit at some point in the future of, who knows, right? 3, 10, $15 million. The numbers are all over the place. Yeah. But what becomes challenging is to find a more efficient or effective investment vehicle then a business. If you have a great operator, great product, great service, and you have a system to run, I would challenge someone to say there's a better, more stable investment than a healthy, mature small business.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you went here. You mentioned something very important. You said, I realize there's a day in the sun where you really have to put in the full effort, work those 80 hours, kick your butt. But then, if you're growing it properly, you should get to a point where it's on its own. You have the systems and processes in place where you don't need to be so hands-on as you did on day one, wearing all the hats.
Couldn't agree more with that, Christina. So that fast forward to present day, right? I'm the CEO of a company called MIT 45. I came on board as a consultant late in 2018. The company was stuck at 5 million a year in revenue, right? And it's laughingly to say stuck at 5 million, right? 5 million is a great number. So if you're having, listen to us have a conversation, you're at 5 million, congratulations. That's a huge milestone. But they were there for 2 or 3 years and they just couldn't break through the glass ceiling. And I came in and originally came in because they wanted, the two founding partners wanted to step away from the business. They said, look, I think we want to sell it. We're bored. We're tired. We've been at this for 8 or 9 years. So just like you said, the likelihood of even making it 8 or 9 years and 5 million is so marginally small. But we press that fast forward button to today. And as we wrapped up 2022, right? It's sometimes challenging to remember what year we're in, 2022. This little business hit just over 70 million in revenue. And
wow.
What I found is now as operating as CEO, there's these different sprints that you go through in life. And it's right. There was a lot of intense focus to go from 5 million to 11 million. And so much of that was systems and processes, bringing in the right people, doing things the right way, which started to lower the load on someone like me, right? It's easier. And then as we crossed into that, the next year was 25 million and then, up from there. But I'm in the season right now, Christina, where I feel like I'm carrying all the load again, right? Incredible staff around us, right? Amazing team, about 100 full-time employees. But our next big milestone is that 125 million in revenue this year. And that's done through strategic acquisitions. That's done through a whole bunch of different vehicles. And there's something that I haven't ever been able to find in a business book. I keep growing as the business keeps growing, not just myself. I hadn't heard that, you're going to be involved in lawsuits. There's going to be 3, 4, 5 lawsuits going on at any time. Trademark infringements, people trying to take our IP, right? There's people that are knocking on our door to buy us and we're knocking on other people's doors to buy them. So the work is different. The focus is different as a CEO or as a partner. But I'm absolutely I'm back in another one of those seasons, Christina, where it's a 60, 70 hour work week. And I absolutely love it, right? I'm probably a little bit of a sadist when you get right down to it. I mean, I think when you truly love a business, it's tough to break away from it.
Well, let's go there because that's one thing I hear from a lot of new startups. I think a lot of people start business with the idea of I have this gift, this talent, this information to present to the marketplace that is needed. And you're like, oh, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to make a bunch of money. I want to be a successful business owner. But they go into it with the idea, like you mentioned off the get-go, is there's a certain measure of effort that's going to have to go into the beginning of the foundation. It's like building the foundation of a building. It's going to take a lot of work to make that foundation very strong. And once you have the processes and the foundation set, then you can start to say, okay, maybe those 80 whatever hours come down a little bit as you get the right talent, you have the processes in place. And then, then you go for the next challenge. What I hear often from business owners or new business owners is, so when do I get to be over with this and just get to ride into the sunset? And I'm like, that's not the attitude you want to have in business. No. It's not about riding into the sunset and then you're all over. It never ends. It's like a journey of growing yourself. That never ends either.
Christina, I couldn't agree more with everything you just shared. I mean, I look at it that there's that first $1 million year. And that to me, you come up with a good idea, you figure out, market message match or product market fit. There's some things that go into that are going to be required to hit that $1 million, right? A sales process, a marketing process. And to me, that is that startup phase, that phase of, man, you're going to have to grind this out. But then I see once we get past that phase, it's, can you get a business owner to understand the fact that they're going to give up some net margin, right? Because what I see is you got a great idea, a great product, and maybe you're running at 20 or 30% net income, but now you need to start adding levels of staffing so you're not involved so granularly in every part of the business. And so that additional staffing is going to come from somewhere, that money to pay people. And what I found over and over again is if you're questioning if now's the time to hire someone, the answer is almost always yes. Like almost 100% of the time, it was yes before you started questioning it. Because to me, what I see is that there is a finite amount of mental bandwidth we have. I know the decisions I make at the end of a day are not as efficient and effective as the beginning part of the day. And so you start wearing all those hats and you start carrying all those loads. And all of a sudden, you actually have a chance of capsizing your business, right? Especially that startup phase, that I'll even say 5 million and under phase, a couple key missteps can very quickly leave you searching for an equity partner, looking for additional financing, or having to close the doors. And it's always those one or two small things: extending too much credit to somebody, taking a risk on a new manufacturer supplier. Yeah. Those things over and over again just seem to really stack up on top of each other.
So would you say one of the biggest errors of a small business getting started in that launch period is really not hiring quick enough? And what do you think their stoppage is? I've heard some people say, well, we just don't have enough funding yet. Once we do, but what is that point where you do have enough set aside to hire someone?
Yeah, that's another great question. So I'll say that my vantage point or my thought on this is just a thought. It's not the thought. I think that it's just how I view the game of business. And to me, when you start looking at hiring people, I think it is you have to be really real and candid with yourself about what your skill set is. Right? Some people are incredibly diligent and they're detail oriented, they're task masters, and that is a skill set. That is a necessary skill set in a business. The other skill set's also necessary, right? That sales, that marketing, that throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. And I think a lot of startup founders are more of the latter, right? They're more of the, hey, we're going to wing it, we're going to go for it. One of the best things to me you can do is start to cover your blind side. Can you hire somebody that operates in the opposite spectrum that you do? If I'm a salesperson, I'm a marketing person, I'm a glass is 3/4 of the way full, and I'll go build 3 more glasses just to make sure I have extra water. That's fantastic in one capacity. But on the other side, I need that contrarian vantage point to share with me. Hey, I love what you're thinking, but we're running a little tight on cash. You might not want to take that leap right now. And I'm going to say, oh no, it's going to work out, right? I can make anything work out. I'm a startup guy. And so I think some of it is covering your blind side. I think that as you made mention or asked the question, Christina, about when is the right time, right? Fiscally. Right. It's always easy to throw stones from a glass house, but I like to get things set up where there's at least 2 or 3 months of operating capital in reserve and your debt load is pretty low. You've got your cash conversion cycle pretty tightened in before you start taking on a bunch of additional debt. But I'm also really conservative. I mean, it all started. So after I sold the web hosting company, I went on my first startup, and Christina, I failed miserably. I started a high-risk merchant processing company. 18 months after its inception, I was flat broke. And I don't mean hypothetically flat broke. I mean, rental properties in foreclosure, vehicles being repossessed, negative net worth, like everything was gone. And now in hindsight, I can look back and say, I didn't have someone to hire to cover my blind side. I was the glass 3/4 of the way full. I'm going to sell. Yeah. And the fulfillment side started breaking down.
Boom.
And the numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you went here. I've made some of these critical mistakes myself, hiring in with people to partner with that turned out to be a fiasco, and I lost clients, and then your reputation, you can't get that back easily if you end up going in that direction. But I also like that we went here because I think people will say, oh, I'm going to wait for the perfect time. But you mentioned something even more important, which is having someone that's going to be your contrarian to not just say what you want to hear. Because I think if you're a glass half full type person, you want to be positive, but sometimes you just need to be a little bit more realistic, and having someone more practical to say, yeah, that sounds good, but we need to be more practical right now financially. And I think what I heard from a business owner that I worked with a couple of years ago, he said often people will hire people who are like them, and that's the exact opposite you want to do.
I couldn't agree more with that, Christina. And so I've even, inside of the businesses now that I own or consult for or have equity in, started to use third-party softwares to cover some of those blind spots. Right? I'm not affiliated with these software platforms. I don't have these are just anecdotal things that I found that work for us. There's a platform called Cloverleaf, where inside of a company, you have every person on the team take a handful of very quick assessments, right? Maybe 15 minutes or less. There's 6 or 8 of them, and starts to create this beautiful map of, okay, as I'm stepping into a meeting with Christina, these are the things that make her really excited. These are things that slow her down. These are what she focuses on. And they're things that are more than just tertiary, right? They're multiple levels deep into somebody's psyche. So once you have a company established, and Cloverleaf is a very, very low investment into understanding how to get the most out of your teammates. Mm-hmm. The other side of that, we have predictive index and criteria, which are assessments for individuals to take prior to stepping into a company, right? It's during our hiring process. Because I found over and over again, I can have someone that interviews really well. They've read every interview book. They're polished. Their resume looks great. Mm-hmm. And then they jump in the company and they're just either not a good cultural fit. Their hard skills aren't quite there. There's these little nuances that happen. And so we've really become more intentional in the hiring process by using some of these third-party softwares to help us, I say, cover our blind side. And also, like I'm in the process right now, Christina, of looking for a chief of staff. We're just at the evolutionary point where that makes sense for our organization. And so I know that chief of staff they have to be so intimately intertwined into my life that they have to be the match but opposite to me. And so having them take assessments, I've had incredible conversations with some really brilliant, very qualified chiefs of staff. But from looking at these assessments, like, this isn't going to work long term. I'm able to pull it up on a Zoom call like we're on now and share, like, you're an incredible individual. I'm sure I can see why you're successful, but with me, here's why it's not going to work for us, because we're too similar, and I need somebody that's not as similar. So beautiful statement you made.
Wow. I love that you're that honest. I think one of the biggest things about being a business owner is you really have to get clear with yourself, understand yourself, know yourself first, in order to then bridge that gap when you bring in talent. Because in order to know what works and doesn't work for your business, your vision, and you, is to first understand yourself.
Yes. Beautifully stated. I think it's also, as I talk about more the exit side of things, right? Exiting businesses is part of a natural life cycle to me. I don't love to hold on to a business for, the next generation. I think we should grow it and eventually sell it off to someone that might be more capable or more passionate about growing it to another level. Mm-hmm. And what I found is when we let our identity be too tied up in just the business, when we haven't figured out enough pieces and parts about ourselves, and the business becomes synonymous with us and there's no separation, it makes those potential capital gains events, those exits, more and more challenging. You think about it, you spent 7, 8, 10, 12 years growing a business, or maybe you're a startup and it's 2 years, but you still spent so much time and energy growing this business. And then all of a sudden you're going to get a check, which, woohoo, right? We all celebrate the check. You wake up one morning, you don't have an office to go to. You don't have staff to support. All the things you become used to, all the weight you've been used to carrying on your shoulders, is just not there anymore. And most people I share that with say, well, that's crazy. Who wouldn't want that? Mm-hmm. Well, when you're used to a certain way of life for so long, and that way of life is no longer available to you, it's a existential crisis for most people that haven't spent the time really understanding themselves. Yeah. So love it not only from the growth side, Christina, but also from the exit side. I think that's an incredible gift you just shared with everyone.
Yeah. And Ryan, you make a good point there. There's a lot of people who've had a vocation, like a doctor or a lawyer, where they've done it for 40 years, 50 years, and now they retire. And often you think, yay, I get to retire. I get to go travel in a yacht or whatever. But a lot of them end up dying within the year because their very identity and what they tied up into their purpose for living is over. And yes, unless you have a new purpose, it's like, well, why be here anymore? So that's a great point. Well, I don't want us to leave. This has been a very fruitful, fascinating conversation. And I don't want anyone to leave without finding out more about you, more about your business. How can they do that?
Yes, Christina. So any social media platform, anything that exists, yeah. I'm a pretty simple guy. Like I said, it's just my name, Ryan Niddel. That's RyanNiddel. I run my own social. I have my own email list that's on ryanniddel.com. And the email, if you decide you want to opt in, I just share what I'm up to. I share what's working. I don't have anything to sell. I don't have a course you can buy. It's literally just a way for me to consistently pour it and share back with the community. So people hopefully don't have to misstep the same way that I've misstepped.
Wow. Well, I really thank you for sharing your valuable wisdom today. I know it's going to help some new business owner listening in, or maybe someone who's seasoned, who's just struggling right now. And you've given them just the wisdom they need to hear today. Thank you so much, Ryan Niddel, for coming to Savvy Broadcasting.
Thanks for having me, Christina.
You betcha.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.